Hello and welcome, I'm Alas Garjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. The reform of institutional care system for children continues for almost a year here in Ukraine. It is estimated that by 2026 it will reduce the amount of orphanages and replace them with family-type facilities. So what results have already been achieved and what remains to be done? To discuss this, we welcome to our studio today Kyrylo Domrovskyi, Deputy Director of Children's Right Protection and Healthcare Department at the Ministry of Social Policy. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you for inviting.
It's a pleasure to have you in the studio. So let's start the discussion from the fact that Ukraine stepped on this path of reforming the child care system in 2017, right? It launched this new strategy. And until 2019, there was a first stage of the implementation. Could you tell us about the results and what this first stage was about?
Yeah, this ambitious strategy was adopted only 2 years ago, but we have achieved some result. First of all, I would like to tell you that we have about 70,000 of orphans in Ukraine and only 5,000 of them are in the institutional care system.
In the orphanages?
In the orphanages, right.
70,000 versus 5,000.
Yeah.
Wow, this is impressive.
Let's mention some achievement of our reform. Till today, 59 orphanages was transformed. About 22 of them was totally closed. 12 transformed into daycare facilities, and about 22 have become stationary care facilities. And by the end of this year, it is planned to reorganize about 38 orphanages.
To reorganize them and also to transform them into these family type or daycare type facilities?
Not family type, to some other type of, not an orphanage like it is, but orphanage, for example, daily type or center for rehabilitation or palliative help or something like that.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting. So if we're speaking about transformation of these institutions, could you please tell us what is this daytime facility? So this is like the facility, childcare facility that allows the orphan to stay there only during the day?
Not orphans, because as I have already told, only 5,000 of orphans are in orphanages. But who are the others? It is children from families, and it is
who do not get the proper parenting.
Yeah, and this is a real challenges for us.
Okay, so then I misunderstood.
Responsible parenting. So these daycare facilities should help parents to grow them children, and to help, for example, foster parents to grow some orphans with special needs or some other kinds of disease or illness.
I understand. So then I misunderstood the statistics. We have 5,000 orphans and 65,000 children who are having...
No. We have totally 62,000 orphans and only 5,000 of them in the orphanage. The other are already in foster care or family type orphanage.
Okay, so they do have some accommodation and a place where they can have some parenting care. So as far as I understand, 2018 launches the second stage of this national strategy. So what is on the plan?
Every region and every regional administration should adopt regional plans of transforming orphanages and implement it.
Until 2019, this was on a state scale, like the national reform, and now this reform transforms onto the regional scale, and every region
every regional authority should take care about it and implement it.
This is very nice. And what about the third stage? As far as I understand, the deadline of this strategy, of this project, is 2026.
Yeah.
So by 2026, we will see the number of orphanages drastically reduced. So what is the third stage then about?
Third stage is not already become to us.
Yes, it will start in 2025, right?
Yeah, it is. And for example, and we are talking about some healthcare system, orphanages from healthcare system. At the 2020, there is no family children in this system, only orphanages and orphanages who have some prescriptions for this system.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting. But is it possible, theoretically, that orphanages will disappear completely by 2026 as a kind?
Very ambitious agenda, and we are doing all the best to achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope so.
Okay, so
you
this
see,
is on the agenda.
Every child deserves to be in family.
That is true. That is true. But on the other hand, let's look at the issue of parenting in Ukraine.
Okay.
It is extremely hard in Ukraine to adopt a child, and especially if we're speaking about the foreigners. Could you tell us, as of today, what are the requirements?
Okay. First of all, we should separate these two issues. First, domestic adoption, and the second, inter-country adoption. If we are talking about domestic adoption, it is a first priority for all children, not only in Ukraine, but all over the world. Because we should understand the legal nature of adoption. Children are going to be as a biological one, the same rights with biological children. Children lost the status of orphan. And for every children, it is the best interest of for every child to be in Ukraine, to stay in Ukraine, not to go abroad. And only for children who cannot be in Ukraine because there is no family who, for example, can give
the proper care.
Yeah, care for a child with very hard disease or illness like hep C, Down syndrome, spina bifida, etc. HIV. For these children, we can use such system as an inter-country adoption.
So inter-country adoption works only if the child is not being adopted in the country itself, inside of the country, and if the child faces some health problems.
Yes and no.
This sounds rough.
For example, it is impossible to adopt the child under 5 years old if this person is healthy, mm-hmm. only for children with illness. And there are, for example, some other cases. If children have some severe illness, as I told, this child can be adopted by foreigners, or if child is going to be adopted by relatives, it is impossible to make this adoption under 5 years old, or if all brothers and sisters are going to be adopted by one family and at least one of them has already 5 years old, or if prospective adoptive parents are going to adopt brother or sister of children, if prospective adoptive parents has already adopted a brother or sister of child who are going to be adopted.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we're talking about children's rights, it is probably worth talking about children abuse also, and I would like to say that this issue is being referred to in the Ukrainian government and among the international institutions who are currently working in Ukraine trying to bring a change. And I would like to mention that on June 3rd, there was a conference End Violence Against Children organized by UNICEF, and this was the first large-scale conference dedicated to ending the child abuse. So the experts, Ukrainian experts and international experts, have been developing the system how to collect the data on child abuse and prevent violence through education. This is very important. We do have a soundbite from that conference. Let's watch.
We know that from the latest available data that 67% of children face bullying, And the surveys also indicate that there is a strong social norm of accepting some forms of violence. For example, 42% of parents think that emotional violence against a child can be acceptable for educational purposes. Unfortunately, there is still limited understanding of the cycle of violence. 44% of adults mistakenly believe that witnessing domestic violence in childhood will not lead to violent behavior in adulthood.
So we can see that the figures are very troubling, and we can see that Ukrainian parents probably using maybe that some kind of Soviet style agenda, Soviet style of parenting. They often excuse some kind of emotional and often physical abuse against their children. And probably it is worth mentioning that we should not only educate children on their rights and the ways how to defend them, but also parents on their children's rights. So how does the Ministry of Social Policy approach this issue?
Thank you for this question. Really, it is a really dramatic issue if we are talking about violence in the circle of trust, like school, family, friends, and not only UNICEF helps us to achieve some result and to change our policy, but as well the Council of Europe, because you see in 2016, Council of Europe adopted the strategy of the Council of Europe for the right of the child, and one priority area of the strategy is the life free of violence, especially in the violence of the circle of trust or the worst form of violence like sexual abusing or some working violence. So every day we are trying to change our legislation, first of all, and second, to
criminalize those offenses.
Of course, they have already criminalized, but a really important issue is monitoring, how to detect it
and to fix,
and after that to prosecute.
I understand. And the very last question, because we unfortunately run out of time, is there any educational work being done in order for this issue to be always on the agenda, this topic to be always discussed in schools, maybe with the teachers, maybe with the social workers?
Yes, of course. Children should know, first of all, their rights, and they should trust parents, teachers, and report about any case of violence.
That is true. Well, thank you so much for having a time to come to the studio and to be a guest and to deliver this important information to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Kyrylo Domrovskyi, Deputy Director of Children's Right Protection and Healthcare Department at the Ministry of Social Policy. Thank you for watching Head to Head, and stay tuned for more with UATV.